We're back. We're back. Quickly, surprisingly, Joe Sullivan, again, sports editor of the Boston Globe, here with us. And as you mentioned, to your liking, Joe, we're going to jump into some college basketball right now.
We're out of season, but it is one of my favorite things, that's for sure, yes.
It's been making some news lately. I believe the last week or so, it came out that there's going to be a new Final Four. A Final Four to start? The Final Four. A Final Four play-in matchup. The last four at-large bids, I believe it is, will play the play-in games to decide who, in fact, the last 16 seeds are. Do you think that's a good plan?
Well, I really wish it would just stay at 64 and they'd keep it that way. I'm a purist. But if they're going to change it, I'll settle for this, and I think this is sort of a wise way to do it, rather than expand to 96, which I think would just dilute it and make the first earlier games kind of meaningless. This is kind of a good solution. It pleases some of the people who want to expand the tournament, but doesn't totally ruin it in my mind. And then I also like the way they match the teams up. The last four at-large teams have to play to get into the next round, and the last four seeded teams on the other one. So it's sort of they split the difference there rather than taking the bottom 8 teams of the tournament, because they would normally just take all the smaller conferences and put them out there, and they'd really be ostracized, marginalized. And that always isn't the case. Sometimes these teams can win a game or two, and you never know until they actually play.
Northern Iowa over Kansas. That could.
I believe there was a team called Butler that went to the final. If I wasn't
mistaken.
Yeah,
good. That would be a really good example. And I guess there could be a case where Butler would be among those teams that had to play in if they just made it the final 8. Seeded teams. If it's only recently that Butler's really gotten that respect where they're seeded a little higher. There might be another Butler that could get seeded out if it was the final 8 seed. So I really like the compromise. I think it's good.
I think you were kind of leading into this before, but do you think that now that the 16 seeds will have a game before the actual tournament starts, do you think this will give us a shot to actually see a 16 team beat a 1 seed?
It will happen. Maybe not in my lifetime,
eventually,
but in your lifetime.
Yeah, it's got to happen eventually. Do you think this speeds up the process?
Well, so the 16s would have to play and then move out to play once. They'll have one game under their belt. I'm thinking out loud here. You make a good point. I hadn't thought of it that way, because now they sort of settled down. They got their nerves under control. They've played a game. They've won a game. They get some confidence. I think you're onto something there. I like that.
Our own Alex Barth over here.
If the 16 team beats 1 seed this year, you got to come back in March, and we can talk about it.
Absolutely, I will.
We know who to give some credit to. But another controversy really stirring up in both, not just college basketball game, college football game, is the agents and their contacts with the players. That's something we saw. Reggie Bush, his Heisman, and all those accolades, even for USC, is going away. We've seen Derrick Rose before. Basically, almost like every top player, John Wall, or every single top player that comes in.
Yeah, that's coming.
I was just gonna say, give it a year or so, right?
Yeah, that might be sooner.
Tim Tebow.
Tim Tebow.
Not Tim Tebow.
I don't think. But so my question about this would be, do you think that the one and done players like Derrick Rose, like John Wall, they, add to that problem even more, because it looks that they are the players that really are at the center of the problem.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. They're the best players, and those are the ones the agents are going to give money to.
Because everybody knows they're leaving, really.
Exactly. And, here's how I look at it. I love college basketball, and I prefer it to the NBA, but I like the NBA too. This is America. If they want to go professional, they just should be allowed to. There shouldn't be any rule. And that would be that. The college basketball will survive without it, and it always has. And the NBA will benefit some, and some guys will end up being disasters because they did it. But this is the freedom we live with, and you're allowed to mess up your own life, or, like LeBron James, capitalize it and become a billionaire.
I think it gives more publicity to college basketball, because then they have more one-and-done players, which gives more focus, more people trying to watch these players, and more talk shows over whether they should do it and who they're going to go to. And that's just more publicity and more showings of college basketball.
If we keep the rules, what you're saying?
No, I mean if we lean down on the rules.
Oh yeah. Well, I think it's a stupid, silly rule. I think you all make good points about why it's bad. So can anyone come up with a good one? Yeah, I don't.
Just to make sure guys are mature, to make sure guys are mature enough to get into the league. I mean, obviously, you got guys like LeBron James that's a really extreme case of somebody who comes right out of high school and succeeds. But if you look at, there's a lot of people who came out of high school and they just weren't ready for the game yet. You got to wonder, a couple years in college, a great example I think is Kendrick Perkins is a good player. If he had played a year or two in college, how much more advanced would his game be?
I think you make a good point. I didn't mean to argue it that way. I think they would benefit from playing college. They would improve. Their games would get better.
Yeah.
But I just don't think you can make someone do that.
I was watching, as you said before, Adam Schefter. I was watching him the other day, and part of the new CBA, they're trying to get players who can come out of high school for football. And I just think if you look at basketball, you don't need to be you don't even need to be as mature as basketball. I think in football, if you have some 18-year-old and you have Ray Lewis, it's not going to mix. And I think that all sports you should have to play a year in college.
Well, you know the way around it, why you can't do that in football is that that rule is collectively bargained between the players and the owners, and anything that's collectively bargained is binding, where the NBA doesn't have that. That might be part of the new contract. So, boy, that'd be tough to come out of high school and play professional football.
Yeah. There's already such a skill difference between college players and NFL players to high school to NFL would just be crazy.
Not to mention the physicality. You're still basically 18 years old. You're still grown and all that stuff. Unfortunately, all this great talk, we have to bring it to an end. So, Joe Sullivan, we thank you so much for joining us here, along with the two Alexes over here.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Feel free to come back anytime, and we'll continue this discussion that we have. Maybe we can come up with a good reason for the
one and done rule. And we have to come back when 16 beats 1.
Yeah,
exactly.
Or come back for the March Madness.
All right, we'll do it.
So for the Alexes again, Joe Sullivan, sports editor of the Boston Globe. I'm Chris. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you next time.
That went well.
We're good.